Good morning all. Today we will be discussing about pollination and fertilization. After this class you will be familiar about the definition of a flower, structure of a flower, pollination and its types, comparison between self-pollination and cross-pollination, agents of pollination, fertilization in plants. We all are familiar with flowers. So moving on to the definition of a flower, flowers are the reproductive part of a plant. And on looking to the structure of a flower means a typical flower consists of 4 parts: calyx, corolla, androecium and gynoecium. When we visualize the structure of a flower, here we can see stamen, carpel, petal, sepal and receptacle. So stamen is represented, or stamen is said as the male part of a flower, and carpel on the other hand is the female part of a flower. So here the stamen consists of anther and filament, and the carpel consists of stigma, style and ovary. Okay. So when we look on to the detail of stamen and carpel, as said earlier, stamen is the male part and it consists of anther and filament. Carpel is the female part and it consists of stigma, style and ovary. Inside the ovary there is ovule. And moving on to pollination. Pollination is the transfer of pollen grains from anther of a flower to the stigma of the same flower or another flower. When we look onto the picture, we can see here the anther and stigma, and the transfer of pollen grains from this anther to stigma is known as pollination. It can be on the same flower or different flower. There are 2 types of pollination, that is self-pollination and cross-pollination. When we look on to the self-pollination, when the pollen grains are transferred from the anther to the stigma of the same flower or another flower of the same plant. I repeat, same flower or another flower of the same plant. It is known as self-pollination. On the other hand, cross-pollination, when the pollen grains are transferred from the anther of a flower to the stigma of a flower of another plant. Here on the self-pollination, it is of same flower or same plant, and in cross-pollination it is of different plant or different flower. When we visualize that, here we can see that self-pollination means directly transfer of pollen grains from anther to stigma of a same flower. And in cross-pollination we can see that the anther of one flower and the stigma of other flower, the transfer of pollen grains from anther of one flower to the stigma of another flower. So here when we look on to the comparison between self-pollination and cross-pollination, self-pollination occurs within a flower or between 2 flowers of the same plant, and as said earlier, cross-pollination occurs between 2 flowers of different plants. And in self-pollination there is no need of agent of pollination, while in cross-pollination agents of pollinations are required. In self-pollination, pollen grains are produced in small numbers, but in cross-pollination the pollen grains should be produced in large numbers. And there is, as said earlier, there is no requirement of agents, and so the flowers are not attractive. And in cross-pollination, flowers are attractive so that the agents can be attracted to the flower. I hope it is clear about the definition of a flower, structure of a flower, pollination and the type of pollination. Thank you.